bring it back. How do we do it? Like, how do we do it? How do we do it? I know we talked about art, so we know art is we got that checked. How else do we do it? Like, how do we? Because I get so I'm very passionate about connectivity, right? And I it pains my heart when I talk to people in any rural community, because it seems like across the board, a lot of people that live in rural communities feel like they are outside of the conversation, right? So how do we bring people together and at least begin that? And yes, we start with conversation, but then how else can we be more intentional? Because I think about small businesses, right? And they're struggling right now. A lot of small businesses are struggling. And I'm saying, how? When I see the lines at Taco Bell, or you see the lines at Popeyes, and people get excited because there is a Wingstop coming. I love
Right
Wingstop,
on.
so that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm going to come down to yours too. But how do we do that? How do we get people to, I guess, even get that excitement, right? The joy of supporting a small business. How can we do better to kind of educate people or inform people about that? I mean, I don't know. That's why y'all are up here to help me answer these questions, because I don't know how we do it, because I hate to see the small businesses that are struggling and closing. I mean, every day I get messages about small businesses that are closing, and it's like, why, Lonnie?
I had a staff member recently who knows, what we do daily, and it's like, oh my God, Lonnie did this on this such day, this on such a day. She must be rich. Electric, gas, living in the city, pest control, all the cleaning supplies, all the food supplies, all of my staff wages, and 15 other bills come into play with that. And I knew when I started this business that I wouldn't see something on an average, you say 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
For a business to be successful and to get the regular return business, if A, your food's good, B, you have great service, C, you're doing something for your community. So if I don't do that on a daily basis, I'm not going to be there. And they will continue to go somewhere else. Or if I don't know how to turn that around.
Yeah.
We try to mix it up. We don't do the same menu, change it 3 times a year. I promote almost every day by 10 o'clock by words, great advice from somebody in this room. You try to have a family in your staff so they want to share the information of what you provide. You include local artists, you include local musicians, you include your neighbors who you shop from. If they don't like me personally, that's okay, because it's who I am. I'm not from Saginaw, so I might be a little bit different than some people that are, doing the same thing that I'm doing. I don't know.
But it's not just your restaurant. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that a lot of small businesses across the board are experiencing this. And I guess the question is there something you can do different? I don't know. I don't know what the answer. How do we get people? I guess it's more so not necessarily the restaurant sometimes, but how do we get people to see the importance, right, of supporting small business? Yeah. How do we do that? Christiana, were you trying to say something?
I wasn't trying to, but I can.
So,
I think that sharing information, especially since we have literally the World Wide Web in our pocket at all times, I think sharing information and being open to learning it and not having a bias of like, oh, well, that's their thing, this isn't my thing. When it comes to small business, I used to be a small business owner, and it was a labor of love, So when you're going to a small business, we all know this. You're going to just support, that person's daughter's t-ball team. This is what you're doing. But I think it's about sharing information. So in 2 parts. One, sharing information of what resources are out there that can help a small business thrive. And
Yeah.
I recently learned about one. There's a nonprofit organization literally located on this campus that I was like, oh wow, you guys do these really amazing things. How can I facilitate this for everyone I know?
Yeah.
And you know, Kevin's done a really good job of helping me kind of facilitate that, you know, pushing out the knowledge. But on the other side of, you know, sharing information and saying, this is where I went today. This is, you know, my review that nobody wants to know, but everybody needs to hear, you know. And you know, this is how I supported the small business, and not in the sense of like, oh, you're, you know, pounding your chest, like, this is what I did today, guys. It's more or less like, this is an experience I had. This is the product they have. This was this awesome small business owner. Just go check them out, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just about sharing information.
And it's free, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff is free, so people should feel. Yep, go ahead,
Go
Charlie.
no.
Oh.
You were finishing up. I was just gonna say though, and I don't even know if using our local leadership. That's where a lot of stuff starts. Versus,
Well, I was getting to leadership next, but go ahead, keep going.
Okay, go ahead.
No,
I'll wait.
go ahead.
I'll wait. But
Well, what I was going to ask was how, because we have some of our leaders here today in Saginaw. How do we get the message to our leaders in our communities, right? How do we get them to, because there sometimes is a disconnect, right? It just is, because sometimes people see things from different lenses, right? So sometimes in leadership, you have a bottom line that you have to get to. I mean, it's just a real thing, and so sometimes some of the other details get missing, right?
yeah.
So how do we stay connected with leadership and not just, I mean, you know, sometimes you go to like city council meetings and stuff and it's just like counterproductive, right? Because people have been waiting all month to go and they just start yelling and screaming and fighting, right? And nothing is accomplished. So how do we do it on a different level where we are seeing our leadership and the leaders within the community, right? Because that's different, right? People that are kind of like appointed or in these different positions are leaderships, but then you have people every day walking the streets of our communities that are leaders, right? That are helping, like the crossing guard or something, like people that help connect with people in the community every day. How do we get the messages to our leaders so that the leaders then advocate for the things that we need within the community? Does that make sense? Okay, how do we do that?
Having them accessible. You know, if you are a leader in the community, have open office hours, be accessible. That's all.
Oh,
no,
go ahead.
I know you're fine. Same thing. Showing up on their doorstep, knocking on doors, and say, "Hey, we need to talk. Let's talk about these things." Getting them involved more on a lower level, if you will, on a local level. Say, "Hey, how can you guys help us with the small businesses in town?" Using them to be the voice.
Yeah.
Maybe they come up with other ideas, or maybe they go to that city council meeting and speak as we're speaking to them.
Yeah, and it's our responsibility too, right, when we approach our leaders to come in a way that they can receive what we're saying, right? Because what I find is that people feel like they have some kind of entitlement to come up to somebody in leadership and say, bark, 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 and that's not cool either,
No,
right? Because
no.
then again, it's counterproductive. So how do we do it?
Well, but I also think they need to understand the power behind critical perspectives at the table.
Sure.
Right? I think a lot of times it's really easy to make a decision in isolation with the information that you have, because people aren't going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
They're not going to give you feedback. You can make the decision, you move on, you get things done. See, look what I did. Right? But oftentimes you get backlash when you do that because you're not bringing in critical perspectives to the table. You're not bringing in the other voices that can help guide that decision, right? And that's ultimately what leaders should be doing is who are the informal leaders within the community, right? Who are the small business owners that we can bring in to listen, to advocate, to have focus groups, to have conversations, and really engage a true concept of bringing all the different voices to the table before they make those decisions versus vice versa. Because they make the decisions, and that's when you get everybody yelling at the council meeting.
Yes. And yes. Devon, you want to add anything? Devon doesn't like to talk, but Devon's gonna talk a little bit.
That's okay. I promised him I was going to call him out if he
You
didn't.
know what? I should have brought like a paintbrush and had him talk through the painting. Go ahead.
Art starts all the conversation.
Yes.
And I don't want to seem like I'm just beating the art drum,
No, please,
but
yeah.
working on the silos.
It's amazing. Deal.
We got these comments and we got these comments. Some people don't like the comment, don't like them. And I would tell the people I was working with at the time, You got 3 people who don't like the silos, but we get 100 smiles a day, and people brought us food, so that's a good point too. I like her restaurant, like food and art.
Food and art, yes.
Food and art
Food and art, yeah, solves all the
is
problems.
is
Yes,
it's
yes, yeah.
it's a way to bring people together.
Yeah, that's a great way to, those silos are gonna bring 50,000 people a year. Just to
Exactly.
come in and view it, and they're gonna want somewhere to go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're gonna wanna know if that stage is gonna be made into a real stage, and what an outstanding spot for live music and getting people together in all forms of art.
And
Right there, it's, I know
that's
the
probably-
plan is in the
Yeah,
works.
Yeah, exactly. And I
So
told
that's
people that.
so exciting for us
Yeah.
They was
in
looking
Old
at the
Town.
number,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
$750,000 number, and they was like, you can't spend that much on some silos to have paint. And I would tell them, like, I wouldn't get into that conversation with them on social media because they don't know the plan. The plan is like, they got a plan for that whole river front right there that's not talked about, and I don't know if it's purposely not talked about, but I understand what it's gonna do when they do put that right there. Like you said, it's a stage right there. We doing the spray paint showdown there. Like, the people who own the property, they was like, well, y'all can do it here this year. That's gonna bring more people
Yeah.
down to that area. We bring in artists from out of town. We got local artists, and like I said, the people. What I see on social media, the people that come in and look at the silos and be like, "Yep, I drove through Saginaw. I went and seen the silos." It's a different story than looking at it on social media. When you get down there and you see how big those silos are, and like I said, you get 3 people who don't like it, but you got 100 people who just came by, and we love what you're doing for the city, and the smiles is what kept us going for the 3 weeks it took us to do them. So, art and food.
Yeah, art and food, art and food, art and food. Did you want to say something, Alex? I thought you.
Yeah, I think we would
And then
be.
we'll go to the next part.
I think we'd be very wise to try to close the gap between the grassroots and the capital. The way that there are so many people who are doing things that need to be supported, and how there are things that are simple solutions for some people, but very insurmountable for others. You know, like a $3,000 obstacle might be nothing to a donor, but for some people, $3,000 is a huge choice between what they're going to prioritize in their life.
Yeah.
So if we have to make those kinds of decisions, it kind of reminds me of a conversation that I got to have with Congressman Kildee once, where he had said, this is really exciting because no one's ever solved this before. So you get to try to figure it out. Like, we have all of these communities that had manufacturing that helped keep small businesses afloat. Like, there was a rhythm where the plants would get out and they'd go and flood the restaurants and the bars. And when you have that, you don't have to have a tote bag that says shop small. You know, like, people just
Just
do
did it, yeah.
but there's just this huge gap where we're trying to figure out, like, how to exist, again, in impossible conditions, when what we really need to be doing is connecting resources to ideas. And the people who have ideas of things that need to change, there's got to be some kind of connective tissue there to make sure that those things can find funding and support, because people who have amazing ideas aren't always people who are fully equipped to take that idea on.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of people who need, real support in order to get over the hurdles that are in front of us.
Yeah. Very true, very true. We are going to get to our audience participation, so you guys get yourselves ready. If you have any questions or comments based on what we've talked about this evening, your time is coming up. You talked about rhythm, right, which goes into the heartbeat, right? And, the reason why this was titled The Heartbeat is because everything that you all have talked about goes into keeping a city, community alive, right? And we know cities sometimes are there, but they are dying, right? So the idea is to keep that momentum going. You all just had the Memorial Cup here, and it was so interesting because there were people that you never see talking to each other that were excited about the Memorial Cup, right? People that don't know a thing about hockey, that were excited about hockey. And it's like, they don't even know what's happening out there, but they were just excited because it was something that came into the city and just changed a lot of things for people, right? And I mean, it's still going, that people are still, kind of reveling in that excitement. So how do we keep that momentum going? How do we do it? And I know, Devon, you said art, so we got your answer.
Everybody know what I'm saying.
We got your answer. But we talked about leadership, and we talked about education, and we talked about small businesses. It was something unique about the Memorial Cup, right? I mean, it was thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And Lottie, I want you to speak on it because I hear you breathing and I hear things happening. So I want you to talk about it. How do we do that on a level that everybody is impacted by that momentum and that excitement, right? Because I'm reading social media, right? I'm in there, kind of paying attention to things. And I know some people were super excited about more Crumble, and some people didn't think it served them as well, right? At all. And so how do we, when we have big, exciting moments like that within our communities, how do we make sure that everybody kind of is a part of that flow, that rhythm, that heartbeat, to make sure they are included in that as well? Lonnie?
6 to 8 months prior to the Memorial Cup, the excitement started. Transportation was exciting to hear about all the things that STARS was going to be able to do to bring these people into our community. Restaurants were asked to hype up, build up, cook up, be ready, all hours of the day, and we were all very excited. They did an outstanding job keeping everybody downtown. I'm not going to knock them because it was such a huge, huge success for the Dow and the people involved, the food trucks in the area that they brought in that kept the masses there. It was the transportation to and from the Dow that got them to the match right before they needed to be there and took them back home to Frankenmuth, to Bay City, to Bay and Tittabawassee, to all the outlining areas, even down the street from the SVRC Marketplace, did not receive, but it was a huge success. People were safe. People got to where they needed to go. They ate, they drank, they had facilities to be able to enjoy their time here. I promoted. We expanded our hours. I bought more, but not as much because I know what I'm capable of doing. So I didn't take out a loan like some small businesses did, which we're encouraged to do because we were going to be 35 to 40,000 people coming into town for those 10 days. My first 4 days, I got 3 tables. In the last 4 days, I went back to our regular schedule and I welcomed the Canadians that did Google and Yelp and say, hey, where's something that's not a chain? Because all the people in Bay and Tittabawassee, those restaurants and businesses, yes, they employ local people, made out. All those chain restaurants, all the chain stores, the buses that STARS promoted and saying they were coming from all aspects of Saginaw County were empty. They didn't promote it with local people that could have taken advantage of that free transportation to get to work, to get to a place, to get around, to go travel downtown because they had transportation to get there. But it was a huge success for the Dow and the vendors that were in that area.
So how can we bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think
Or maybe next time, right?
we have the opportunity. We know the transportation system works. And it was new buses and clean, and the city spruced themselves up. We know that it was safe because they thought about people's safety. We didn't have the incidents that is plagued Saginaw that they say is gonna happen all the time, which doesn't happen. That you hear more about downtown or on the west side than you do out in the township or any of the surrounding towns. You don't hear about their problems, but you hear about ours.
But I gotta,
More positive reinforcement of things that are good downtown. And I won't say greed because that's corporations. So, and corporate greed has the power to keep things in their little realm. So what can we do better?
So one part that you said that we could do better is by highlighting the positive, right? And
Yeah.
some things, which I also appreciate the realness as well, because we need to be honest and transparent about what we feel. Because again, the only way for us to learn from our past is to talk about it, right? And then hopefully reimagine some things for next time, right? How can we do things differently? Christiana, I saw you doing stuff, and then we're going to go to the audience. So you can get that mic. Christiana or Charles, you guys,
I had something.
no private conversations. We talk.
Well, we were just making sure we were both who was going to say something.
Okay.
But she was pointing at me, I guess, so that's what it was. But one of the biggest things that I feel, and it's not just in Saginaw, but it's globally, it's a national thing. But when you remove the invisible gatekeepers that are keeping the small people or the people that are out of the inner circle, that won't allow those people to get in and do what they need to do or do what they want to do, because you're not in the clique. I heard the same thing from a lot of people that, hey, we did all this extra stuff and got prepared, and hey, God bless the Memorial Cup. It was great.
Huge.
Absolutely, it was great. And to have them win at home, that
No, it's
absolutely
great.
wonderful.
And two things can be true at the same time, right?
Yes, absolutely wonderful. But you had so many people holding the gate closed for others that could not get in, that was ready to get in and making preparations to be in, but because you were on this end of the table, you were not in. Or they told you were in, but they closed the door when it was time for you to participate. So, and then the second part, it was said a couple times, and we think about it. We talk about the violence and the crime in the city, but if you think about it, how many times or how many stories have we heard of cars being broken in the city? Mm-hmm. Anybody being jacked anybody being robbed on the street or anything in the city?
We know what jack means. We know.
You don't hear that in the city at all. You don't hear cars being broken into. But unfortunately, you go out to the township, what do you hear? Cars being broken into all the time. Someone's breaking in a car here. Someone's you look at the Ring camera. Someone's trying to open this car door. But in the city, you don't hear that. You don't hear that type of thing in the city. So what are we talking about? Okay, but you may hear a shooting here and there and things like that. But the regular stuff, the mugging, the robbing, you don't hear that in the city. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we have to take those things and say, hey, look at that. That's not.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, Lonnie, is to amplify some of the positivity as well, right? And I think that sometimes it's easy for us to say what's wrong with places, right? As opposed to saying, you know what, but this also is happening really well. Christiana, you trying to say something?
Again, you're calling me out.
Well, you look like you keep looking like you want to say something.
Active listener.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, is that what? Because or else she's like, and then we'll go to the
I guess I gotta find something.
No, you don't have to say anything. We can go to the audience participation.
Okay,
so.
let's do that.
Yes, let's do that. So, if anybody in the audience has any questions or okay.
Hey, my name is Danielle Davis. I'm Saginaw born and raised. It's a lot to unpack with all of this. I lived in Midland for 16 years, and I moved there because my husband wanted to raise our kids in a different community safer, whatnot. One of the issues that I had when I moved there, and it was the same issue that I had in Saginaw. I grew up on the east side. My family went to Saginaw High. So I was surrounded by a lot of Trojans. I was the only one who went to Arthur Hill. Yes. So there was always some rivalry there at home, but I stood strong. But my issue was on the east side, you always heard negative things, right? And it would be televised. But you never heard of any negative things over the bridge on the west side. But there were people, like you say, being robbed. There were stabbings and all these kind of things, but it was never shown in the light. So you had this falsified sense of security and safety over there that you didn't have over here. And that always kind of like, it upset me because there's violence in every community.
Yeah.
And
There's drugs
everywhere, drugs, violence,
Sometimes more in there.
everywhere. And when I went to
Midland
Midland, when I say you would still see things on the news televised about Saginaw, I worked at the mall and for a cosmetic company. Nobody knew me. They didn't know that I was from Saginaw. But I would hear them at the cosmetic counter. Oh my gosh, don't go to Fashion Square. You got to get out of there before it's dark. And they didn't even know I was born and raised there. I didn't have that sense of fear. We talked about fear earlier. I go anywhere I want to go in Saginaw, in Detroit. You hear all these kind of things, where to go, where not to go. And for me, it's like, be aware of your surroundings. But if you don't act like you don't belong, these people don't pay attention to you anywhere, But things happened in Midland, never televised. There was a person who held their girlfriend hostage. That did not make the news. That upset me because if it was here, it would have. And so a lot of things just like, how do we address these things? I'm a person who has lots of ideas. I don't always, I can give you an idea, but somebody else needs to, implement it.
Right.
I have ideas. But the first thing that comes to me when we talk about community, awareness, schooling, because it was always unfair. Like you say, depending where you live, you go over to the other side, they have better education, they have better
Perceived, yeah.
books,
Yeah.
they have the resources that lower income families don't get. Period. That's real. My thing is, okay, how do we do it? I don't know how you would start it, but the media. I mean, there's got to be somebody who is in connection with the media to bring light to these things.
Somebody at this table.
Yeah, okay. The radio, more advertisement, more inclusion, more voice to it, I think. They know that the need is there, but is somebody waiting on somebody else to do it? Of course you need funding, nonprofits or whatever else, I don't know. But you need money. You need awareness, and you need somebody to hear about these things other than just the small businesses. I don't really ever see too many things on the news about bringing awareness to small businesses. Yes, they talk about, but you don't see it. So I feel like it's not a priority. They're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yes. And I think that I do want to highlight Riverfront Saginaw
Yes.
that does a fantastic job of